Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, and are adjusting easily to our fully online classroom setup for not only this class, but all of your other classes as well. Today, we're going to be continuing talking about the argument paragraph. I wanted to touch back on this particular writing style and really focus in, dived in, and go a little deeper into our discussion from last week and really focus in on what an argument paragraph or an argument paper is and why we need to really get adept at writing these kinds of papers. So, in this first slide, again, we're going to be talking about why we're continuing this particular essay topic or writing style. And see that I didn't finish that particular point, but so we're going to continue writing our argument papers. Now, sometimes you might hear them called persuasive papers. An argument paragraph or a persuasive paragraph or an argument paper and a persuasive paper is the exact same thing. So I just wanted to go ahead and lay that groundwork there for you now. That way, if you hear me talking about what you need to add in your persuasive paragraph or examples of what a good persuasive paragraph looks like, then you already know that I'm talking about an argument paragraph as well, because they're the same thing. Now, argument paragraphs, again, are going to be one of your most popular paragraph styles that you're going to be writing in college, particularly for your upper level literature classes. If you check on your degree requirements, most, if not all of you, will need to take at least one literature class at the 2000 level. And most of the papers that you write in that class will be these kind of argument paragraphs or persuasive paragraphs telling you to prove a point or prove a particular thought process that you have about, say, a letter or a short story or a novel that you've read in class. Some sort of research paper-esque writing is a type of argument. And we'll look at a couple of examples of that, just like we did in the first series. We'll look at a couple of examples of what that might look like for your future classrooms. So again, let's go over a quick review on what we talked about last week with our argument paragraph and the 4 basics of writing a good argument paragraph. Of writing a strong argument paragraph is that your topic takes a strong and definite position. This is something that can be argued. This is not just a simple fact. And so a topic that might be considered a good argument topic would be perhaps lots of things, such as the way that the government is run. Right? There are many people who affirm a capitalist style of running a government. There are some people that are looking at the ways that European governments run and want to try socialism here in the United States. And there are several other ways of government that are styles of running government, I should say, that are cropping up and gaining traction. And writing a paper or a paragraph on these kinds of styles might be something that you would want to write about. An example of a topic that would not be a great argument paper is writing a topic where your topic sentence or your thesis statement reads, "The national census takes place every 10 years." Now, you could write a great paper, a potentially great paper on whether the census needs to be abolished or needs to be changed so that it takes place more frequently, but the idea of having a thesis statement that reads the census takes place once every 10 years is not something that can be argued. That's a simple fact. Or if you're writing an argument paper about your favorite celebrity or your favorite musician or whomever, and your thesis statement is this person died on March 31st, 2020. Well, again, that's not really a good argument because that's something that can be proven. So you want to take something that is a stance that people inherently are going to disagree with. Now, you also want it would also be nice if what you're arguing is something that some people agree with, sure, but as long as you have some sort of split that can be separated based on your views, and it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split. You could argue something that most people agree with, but there's still a healthy 10, 20, 30% of people that disagree with that viewpoint. And that's perfectly fine. And you can still write a really well-rounded argument paper based on that kind of viewpoint. But just know that, again, the position that you take needs to be something that can be debated, that can be argued. So that's the first point, is that you take a strong and definite position in your writing. The second point is that you give good reasons and supporting evidence to defend the position. Again, point number 2 goes back to the kind of writing that we've been writing all semester long, where you after establishing your topic, then you provide 3 or 4 different claims to back up your position, and then you add in that kind of evidence to flesh out your thought process, right? And so this is a fairly familiar, would be the best way to say it, a fairly familiar point that we have where, again, you add in your claims and then you provide the evidence to back up those claims. Now, we talked about different types of evidence and different types of claims that you might give, such as facts and statistics or examples. Illustrations are really good points as well. There are lots of different ways to provide that kind of evidence that you're looking for in an argument paper. And we'll actually talk a little bit more about different ways to provide evidence and different ways to draft these kinds of styles in a second video coming up and a little bit later on. Your third point, and this is a really important point, this is what a lot of writers fail to do so in argument papers, but your third point is that you consider your opposing views thoughtfully. One thing that is very important in an argument paragraph and in an argument paper is to acknowledge the opposition. If you do not acknowledge the opposition in your paper, then your audience is left to assume that you only know your one side and you only know to promote your one side, but that you don't necessarily know why it's better than the other side. And that's a problem if you're trying to convince people to take your stance on whatever it is that you're wanting them to take a stance on. So be sure to address the opposition. Now, it doesn't have to be a paragraph long, for instance. If you're only writing an argument paragraph, for instance, say for this class, a sentence or two will suffice, absolutely. But you want to remember that including the opposition shows your readers that you've done your research and you are coming at this paper not necessarily unbiased, because the whole point is to try to convince people of one side or another, but that you are aware of the pros and cons of the other side. And point number 3 is one of the things when writing that will make your overall paper so much stronger because you are able to talk about the other side a little bit. And finally, the 4th position is that you organize your support logically. And again, we talked about that for argument papers. There are really 2 main ways to organize your support, organize your writing, and they're largely the same in a lot of ways. They're just reverses of each other. And that style of writing, that organization, is one that we've talked about before a little bit, and it is the order of importance. And in all of my years of going through school myself and in my time teaching, I've come across both ways strongly supported evidence for seeing both orders of importance being listed as the definitive way to write a paper. Some people will say that you need to start with your strongest position first and really start on that strong foot and write with your best information first and then slowly go to weaker and weaker arguments. Some people say that you need to start with your weakest argument first and then build up to your stronger arguments and end on your strongest note, leave that lasting impression with your reader. Here's the deal. Both are fine. You might want to check with your future professors in your comp classes and in your literature classes as to which one they prefer, but quite frankly, there is no right or wrong way to organize depending on how you want to order your levels of importance. I would suggest that for longer papers, research paper kind of deals, that you go ahead and start with your strongest evidence first, because your professors have a lot of things to read. They have a lot of papers to read through and sort through, and a lot of them are going to sound fairly similar to each other. And so what I suggest is to go ahead and start with your strongest foot first, write your strongest piece of evidence first, and go from there. And the reason why I say that is because, quite frankly, as papers go on and on and on, when teachers have a whole bunch to read, it's going to the first impression they get is going to stick with them more than the last impression. You might end on a really good note, and you absolutely should, but your first impression is going to set the tone for the rest of the paper. And so if you write a longer paper, I would suggest organizing your support with the most important to the least important. For papers like this class, where we're just writing a paragraph or so, by all means, it's a shorter work, and feel free to write whichever style you prefer, ordering your support strongest to weakest or weakest to strongest. Either one is fine, either one works. When I was growing up, I always preferred writing weaker to stronger for that idea of snowballing my argument and making it stronger as the paper went on and leaving with that lasting impression. Either one is completely fine for the purpose of this class. Write whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, in our next video, we are going to discuss a kind of fifth basic or fifth element that we haven't really discussed a lot in our writing, but that is particularly important for an argument paper.